Thank you and welcome to the Finance Subcommittee of the Lowell School Committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairperson Gignac?
Here.
Ms. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Gendron? Two present, one absent.
Thank you very much. We have 3 items on the agenda this evening. First off, we have a review of the FY17 year-end financials. Mr. Frisch, can you just give us an overview?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The original 2016-17 budget was adopted in May of 2016 and is administered by the business office, reported to the school committee throughout the year. The adjustments to the budget for 2015-16 school year were year-end purchase orders that are carried over by the city auditor. In late August of 2016, as you may recall, after the budget was adopted, a grant funding the kindergarten paraprofessionals in the amount of $600,000 was eliminated by the state. The district decided to maintain the kindergarten paraprofessionals. The program was intact. And because the district decided to fund the paraprofessionals from the regular operating budget, that meant the district had a potential looming deficit. Despite the $600,000 unfunded expense from the preceding section, Lowell Public Schools, I'm happy to say that ended in the year in the black. Per the attached report that was sent out to the school committee last Friday, the available surplus of funds are $51,506.87. We do have some additional purchase orders that we're in the process of closing, so that number will grow to probably in excess of $71,944.76. That is my overview of the budget. I did provide some explanations of some variances that occurred throughout the year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, either listed here or other questions that you want to ask about. I'd be happy to talk about it.
Thank you. Did you have any questions? Yes, Ms. Martin.
Thanks very much. Just a quick one. In closing the outstanding purchase orders, does that mean we're basically just taking that $20,000 that hasn't been spent and we're going to be putting it into the current year budget so it releases it from the prior year budget?
No, that unfortunately, purchase orders stop as of June 30th. Right. And then invoices stop without purchase orders on July 15th.
Okay.
As payrolls still occur, are posted in July for June, we don't know the exact amount of what's available. And so the available funds that you see here listed will be part of the free cash that is combined with other departments' surplus funds throughout the city.
So are salary expenses paid on a purchase order?
No.
Okay, then. So my original question of the $20,000 of purchase orders, so were they for actual items that we're now not purchasing, or are we just renewing those purchase orders to spend it in the current fiscal year?
No, those were purchase orders that were finished, and they had excess balances.
Okay.
Yeah, so that order is complete.
Okay, so the projections that were made at the initial for the purchase order just hadn't been met. The total that we had anticipated spending, we just hadn't reached
Right.
that. Okay.
It was finished before the total was paid up fully.
Okay.
Okay. Just a few, sure. Just a quick question. The budget report that the year-to-date report that you have attached here, does this include the budget transfers that are requested?
No.
So those transfers haven't been made?
Right.
Okay, good.
Right.
Before I go on with my other questions, Ms. Doherty?
I just wanted to kind of reiterate what Ms. Martin had asked and make sure that when we're looking at the year end, is the total surplus 70,000? Is there any other surplus funding that might come through at a later date? Or is all we're looking at is 70,000?
Yeah, we're estimating at 70,000. There could be some additional purchase orders that are closed out through our, that are not fully paid up because of, we learned that the purchase order is fully complete, even though there's like $5 left on a purchase order, for example. So,
I guess I'm thinking in addition to purchase orders, are there other?
no, that's it.
Because don't we usually have a significant amount that's in play?
Yeah, if you look here on the report, the last page, you will see that the purchase orders, there's 933, those are still outstanding. Those 933, and we're expecting invoices for those purchase orders. So that's that will be, approximately that amount will be carried forward to the 2017-18 budget.
Okay.
So that is as of June 30th, but that should all be closed by now. or in
No, there's
August?
still purchase order, still invoices coming in. Some of the lead times are long,
Yeah,
and the invoices are only issued when the merchandise is shipped. For one example, we have $200,000 of science kits that are going to be shipped soon, and we're waiting on the invoice before we can pay that invoice and then reduce the purchase order.
okay. Ms. Doherty, were you referring to typically we have like a large sum of money at the end of the year? I think part of that is because we absorbed the 600,000 that would have.
I'm sorry.
The
Yeah,
grant would have.
we usually, remember, as my opening, sorry, I was answering a different question.
Which
We end
opened
up,
up new doors, yeah, for
Yeah.
questioning. Yeah.
so that's why you guys are looking like, what is he talking about? No, we usually end up the year with our surplus of funds. That surplus was taken up by the paraprofessionals that we didn't fund, but it was coming out of the operating funds. So that took a huge hit from our surplus. And we were fortunate we had excess of funds to be able to pay for those paraprofessionals. There was no guarantee so that we would have that surplus, but we were fortunate that it turned out that we did, again, have a surplus of funds. Some of that surplus comes from retirements that occur throughout the year that a new person is put in place at a lower salary. So a teacher retiring mid-year at $80,000 could be replaced at a lower amount of $60,000, for example. So that occurs, just one person is $20,000. So that was one of the big reasons why we had a surplus. Another reason is if they're not hired right away at the beginning of the year, then there's a couple of months of a 12-month employee. If the 12-month employee is not hired right on July 1st, there's some savings that occurs when you're not paying that person for a couple of months. So those are some reasons why there were surplus funds. We can't count on it every year to be.
But in terms of surplus, 70,000 is what we have.
Right, we're not
Okay,
going to see.
That was my question.
Yeah,
Got it, thank you.
right.
Which the 70,000 has been turned over to the city as free cash.
Yeah, it will be. That hasn't happened yet.
It will be when
Will be.
when the auditor closes final.
Yeah, there'll be,
So it's out of our control.
it's out of our control.
Yeah. Ms. Martin?
Could you just remind us what the surplus was last year?
The surplus last year, I think was, I don't have that information available, but it was around 100 or 200,000
I
after.
thought it
we-
was closer to about 1 point something.
Yeah, it was over $1 million, and then you,
Yeah, then we did our purchase orders. I'm talking about
I'm talking about the conclusion of the school year, what our surplus was. We did some additional purchasing after we
Right.
determined that we had that surplus, but that doesn't really count. So what our actual surplus was my memory, and correct me, my memory is at about 1.5, if that's accurate. And if you could check on that and get back to us,
Yes.
that's perfectly fine. Just so we can kind of, determine the swing. Because my sense, I think, like Ms. Doherty's, was like, we're always looking at about between $1 million and $1.5 million at the conclusion of most school years.
I would caution the school committee on that because of a couple of reasons. One, last year was an unusual year because
was.
we had, we were finalized several contracts. And there was a savings established in the suspense account for the payment of salaries that occurred with the conclusion of the contract. So there was a lot of retros that were made, a lot of salary increases at the end of the year, but there was a lot of banked surplus. So that was an unusual year anomaly, and I think this year that we saw this year was probably is going to be more typical than the previous year.
Okay.
anything? No? Okay. As we go through some of your bullet points for variances, the largest is number 8. The health insurance budget was overspent by about 661,000. Can you explain that? Because this narrative here isn't very clear.
Oh, sure. The health insurance budget was overspent by 661,000. Is mainly attributable to the offsets to the health insurance account. The offsets were less than what was budgeted. So
Why was that?
Why was the offsets less than? Well, we didn't need to increase the offsets because when we looked at the end of the year, we saw that we were in the black. At 70,000. If we would have increased the offsets, then we would have had a much larger surplus, and so it wasn't needed. We banked it for the following fiscal year. So those offsets will be used in 2017, 2018.
But it appears that we under budgeted by quite a bit of money.
Right. At the end of when we do our budgets, our budget transfers, they'll wipe itself, zero itself out.
No, I understand that we have surpluses in other accounts that will be shifted over to eat those costs. But what I'm saying is it looks like there was an error in the budget preparation.
No, there were, in the budget, when we budget each year, I'm just going to turn, you don't have your budgets with you, but I'm just going to turn to the budget page that talks about the health insurance account and just go over how we budget for health insurance.
Sure.
Okay, last year for 2016-17, we grant funded, the total expense for health insurance was projected to be $17,241,000. There we had a lot of offsets. We had an offset for grant and revolving fund positions of $1.4 million. 1.450. That offset, that's money coming from the grant funds, and those grant funds then reduce that $17,241,000.
Yep.
So, for example, we did not need as much offsets because we had a surplus in the other accounts.
Right, you had a surplus elsewhere, but what I'm
Elsewhere.
saying is you had a deficit in this line.
Yes. So what we did was we're going to use the offsets for the following fiscal year.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Ms. Martin?
So am I correct in that when you're doing your budgeting, when you have your individuals being paid by grants, based on the allocation, say for example, someone's 50-50, they're 50% being paid from local funds, 50% Title I. Aren't we required to take 50% of their fringe benefits, fringe and taxes, and charge it to the grant in accordance with their percentage allocation? So that you wouldn't then be able to take that offset and use it anywhere else. It would have to be used against those grant monies.
Right. And we're just, instead of using those offsets in FY17, we're using those in FY18. So they
So
are,
in terms of accounting practices, though, you're basically,
the grants are they're two-year grants, so you have the flexibility to use it in FY17 or FY18.
so you're using local funds then to pay for grant positions?
No.
Not their salary, but their benefits and taxes? Maybe just benefits, let's not confuse it, just benefits.
Well, this is, the expenditure is what, right. So in other words, we're not offsetting the local funds.
You're spending the local funds.
Right.
In lieu of spending grant funds.
Yes.
Because your plan is to then take the grant funds and roll them into the second year of the grant.
Yes.
So you've basically separated people from their benefits in terms of the way you're paying for it.
No,
Yeah, you have. Because their benefits aren't being paid for by the grant funds that are paying their salaries. They're being paid for by the local funds, at least in this first year. Maybe in the second year, you'll use grant funds to pay for it.
right.
Okay. That is I've never heard of that practice of separating it that way. So I'm just concerned. I don't know if you have a different criteria for budgeting, like I would never be able to do that in my grant world. So I don't know if there's a difference for municipalities, if you have a flexibility in accounting that we don't have, or that I'm not aware
But
of.
since it's a two-year grant, you have the flexibility to spend it in either year.
Yes, but you're not, you've separated the expense. I mean, the allocation is meant, like, for our federal grants, we're required that we need to prove that our allocation is stable throughout the year, and that the allocation is applied not just to salary, but to benefits and also to taxes. We have to charge off our taxes to the federal grant in accordance with the way you draw down the salary funds,
Do you
because they're
have a single-
inextricably linked.
Right. Is your grant a single-year grant?
I have multiple
Yeah.
year, multiple.
Well, this is a multiple year that,
I've never been able to separate it that way, for multiple years. I mean, we have 5-year grants, we have, so I'm just not aware of that as a practice.
Right.
If, maybe you could just find that out for us and come back, just where the language is that allows us to do that. 'Cause
Sure.
I'm just not aware
be
of it.
happy to.
So We had budgeted to basically use 1.4 million from the grants and revolving as offsets. What did we end up using? What was that figure at the end of the day if it wasn't 1.4 million? Because if we had gone down the road to use the offsets as we had initially intended, then that 661 would potentially be the surplus because it would.
Correct.
Okay. So what do we actually use as an offset?
No, I will get that for you. I don't have the number with me, but I can get that for you.
Okay. Okay. And in the future, I think it might make sense to have, Munis here and your laptop so we can just go over that stuff.
Oh, okay.
I think that might make sense.
Yeah.
Miss, no? Okay. I have a few other questions related to
Sure.
the year-end report itself. I know you had made some cliff notes for some of the larger ticket items, but on page 2, the principal and assistant principal salaries, I see it was overspent by about 88,000, well, in each actually. And what's that related to? Why would that occur?
Okay, principal salaries. If you look at line 71 and look at line 72.
Yep.
Yeah. You'll see there's a $60,000 for merit increases. That is used to offset the 88,000.
So why is that the case? Were there no merit increases, or was it incorrectly charged?
We just charged it each line on the principal's budget.
So you didn't charge the merit increase line?
Yeah, right.
That's the
And so the
issue.
intent is then just to charge each school.
But we
Take
have
that
a
six-
line item in the budget for it. It probably should have been charged directly at the time.
Right,
Okay. So you're going to correct that moving forward?
yeah. And we'll zero out the budget for that and then apply it to the principal line item.
Right, I mean, moving forward.
Yes,
Yeah, you'll just keep an eye on that
right.
items are charged to the correct account. Another question. Page 5, line 180, contracted transportation, is a surplus of 43,000. I don't think we've
Right.
ever had a year where transportation was less than what we had anticipated. Do you have any reasoning for that? Is that special education transportation, I assume?
Those are together. Both transportations are together.
Okay. Do we know why?
You're saying that we're usually over, yeah,
Line
again,
180. In the grand scheme of things, 43,000 isn't a big chunk of change in the 7.5 million, but 43,000, is not, isn't an insignificant amount of money. We should know why.
well, we were 99.5% of the budget.
Yeah, I understand that, but you don't know why.
I do not know why we're $40,000 available. That's correct.
Okay, can we look into that?
Yeah, we can look into that.
Because I had heard that we were likely to exceed the transportation amount that we had budgeted for last year, and then to see that surplus, even though it's very small, was just a surprise to see.
Okay,
So if you can get back to that,
okay.
back to us on that, I'd appreciate it.
All right, so you heard that we were going to, that's why your question, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's not the case.
Let me check into that and give you, get back to you on August 16th
Okay.
with a written,
The detail, okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then, my final question on this report, school capital improvements, page 7, line item 228. Looks like we only spent half the money, but we've spent probably half of our time complaining about school facilities. So that's a little troubling to see that we didn't even spend the money that we allocated for school improvements.
Some of that expenses were charged directly to the rental account.
Okay.
And that's why this account was, had a surplus.
Sure.
They're for, it's mainly not for repairs, but for new equipment.
Capital items, yeah.
Yeah, for an enhancement.
Sure.
It's not for repair. Because the repairs are like millions of dollars.
Right, but for the capital improvements, you could purchase an item that is no longer working at a school, correct?
Yes.
So things that we get a lot of complaints about. My issue with that is even though some of it was charged to the rental, which is fine, as a school committee, we allocated $150,000, or we allocated actually 225, it looks like in a revised budget, to be spent on these items. And I know we just talked about you were 99.5% of the budget, but this is only half.
Okay.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
this is an area that we constantly hear complaints about, and just visiting schools, you can see that they need these purchases in order to be to serve the kids and to the staff, and having an extra, there's $100,000 there where we could have used
Yes.
to improve our school buildings.
Duly noted.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we get a report on what was actually spent? The
Actual
detail.
spent.
Yeah, the detail of the year to date in that line, that 80 grand that was spent. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
And what we purchased with that. Because I'd be curious to see, because I could think of plenty of things to spend that $99,000 that would make loads of people's lives a little better in a month or so. That's my last question on this report. Did you have anything else, Ms. Doherty?
No, except to just make a comment that as we go forward, I think it does make sense to have the charges go in the right line item so that we can track it better. And I'm still interested in seeing if there's more money left over that can help us with the current budget year that we're facing.
Yeah, I'm not, I didn't really understand what you were saying. I know what you're saying is that you want to see it in each line item, but then you're saying you'd like to see if there was money left over.
Well, for instance, on that line item that we have this surplus, money that we didn't spend on school capital improvement, or it's not extra money. What you're saying is that came out of the rental line item? So is
Right.
that line item then going to be at a negative?
No, because of the income that we generate about $400,000 of income.
So would that mean that that then is additional money that we haven't spent? Albeit we needed that equipment, or we wouldn't have budgeted it. But, I mean, we're looking at a pretty significant hole going into the school year that begins in a few weeks. I'm very anxious about that, so.
Right. So the 51, even though it says $99,000 there was available, we're still limited by the 51,000. So in other words, I can't spend 99,000 if I only have 51,000 available. So it's not 99,000.
Well, what's the revised budget of 225,306?
That was probably a purchase order from the prior year, and that was spent. And then there was also a PO of 45,000. So when we look at these line items, I have to be cognizant of the total, what's available.
Yeah.
So, in other words, if you wanted the line item for health insurance to be used the offset, that would have zeroed out the available funds. You would have seen 0 instead of 661, but then we would have had 661 plus the 51,000 go to free cash.
Right, but I understand that, and that's what the body voted on for the budget. So the decision to go in another direction with the offset, I think, is what we're questioning, and that's our concern. So if we had gone the route that we voted on in the budget to use $1.4 million of the grants and revolving funds for that insurance cost, then we would be seeing a surplus of over 700,000.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
And then I wouldn't have had the flexibility to use those funds in FY18. Case in point, we just learned that we have, for Title I and Title IIA, our grant funds are going to be reduced by up to $1 million. So
Okay.
we just learned that last week. So here's a perfect example. If we didn't use those funds for FY18, for FY17 instead of FY18, we wouldn't have the ability to, we would have not had the flexibility. We would have had to make more drastic cuts out of the grant-funded positions.
Okay. And just perhaps we should be maybe made informed of that thought process a little earlier rather than after the fact. With our monthly budget reports, if you see that this is the route you recommend, then maybe that's when you would bring it to our attention.
To be honest with you, I'm looking at that year-end balance every day from June 22nd through.
Yep.
And I don't know how this is going to exactly work out. So I have to, I don't find out until all the payrolls are finished, completed, and that occurs the last week of June.
You don't do any projections?
We do projections, and
The only numbers that you probably won't know for sure are substitutes, and everything else is pretty much set by June.
now there's substitutes, there's long-term substitutes, there's
they're not
retirements.
Right, I said substitutes,
Yeah.
but you're hiring a long-term substitute in June? No. You're not, Mr. Cassidy. No, you wouldn't hire a long-term substitute in June.
No, but those final numbers are not coming in until the last week of June.
Okay, I think there may need to be a little more work done on the projection side, because yes, Mr. Cassidy.
Just to respond, there may be cases that we hire long-term subs for positions, not necessarily, permanent long-term subs, but depending on the case, they may hit that account. And just to emphasize the projections, we were doing projections on a weekly basis as far as payroll. It was 4 hours every single week doing downloads and doing projections. So as far as salary and wages, I thought we were in pretty good position. With the 42 and the 52, the retirees, I thought we were in pretty good position to project on those. Getting back to, the POs, those are the intangibles and last-minute purchases. So that's one of the things that we were looking at.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it was a busy June. We were projected out.
Ms. Martin?
Would it be possible for us to get a page, that could show us all of the revolving account charges to the cafeteria? It's cited, obviously, at a number of points throughout this. It'd be great if we could see it all in one place.
Yeah.
And the other question I would have, just in terms of getting some additional information, would be on the way our circuit breaker kind of broke down this year. And Not,
What do you mean broke
not that it was
down?
broken, give me a breakdown of the circuit breaker, how it was managed. I know we had a lot of challenges last year where things got confusing in terms of what was going to the city and what was staying, and a lot of those conversations. I haven't heard any of those conversations. I'm gonna believe that that's because everything's gone perfectly, which is great. So if we could just get that information, that would be
Yeah, I
really
can tell
helpful.
you, it did go perfectly. We were, end of the year, we ended up with just under $2 million.
And our ability to roll over is at 2 million?
It was 2.1.
2.0, I was off by 1, okay. Good.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a lot that is going on in the last few months of June. We're looking at circuit breaker, we're looking at year-end totals, we're looking at, how much is available at the end of the year. Not everyone spends out their accounts to the penny, and so you're looking at literally thousands of accounts and seeing how much is available at the end of the year. And then with the payroll, we've, as Mike has talked about, we were doing projections every week on the payrolls. And there are intangibles on the payrolls, the hourly tutors, there's professional development. So there's a lot happening at the last month. And I mean, I'd be happy to meet the end of June, if you want to meet then, but we don't know the final numbers until probably the middle of July, because that's when we still can process invoices in July for June, up through July 15th. So that 3-week period from the first week of June to the next 2 weeks in July are really very fluid. And to be honest with you, we had a $160 million budget that we were working on, and the year-to-date was 159.3 million. The POs were just under $1 million. So if you look at the percentage used, we spent 100%, or committed 100% of the budget, and to me, that is pretty good. We had up to the limit on the, as we just talked about, on the circuit breaker funds. So I think all in all, this was, to be honest, a really good budget year. And especially when we were down by 600,000. So I'm really pleased with the results.
Great. So if I could just reiterate, so we'd be looking forward to getting a breakdown of the cafeteria funds,
Revolving.
food service funds, sorry, cafeteria, old school, and then a breakdown of how the circuit breaker closeout went. So if we can get both of
And
those.
also, I think Jackie mentioned the rental fund.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Or it was
Yep.
Robert, someone mentioned the rental funds.
Sure. And I think it might be in the best interest of the district to have a more lengthy discussion on those grant impacts and what that means for us as a district and what it means for our budget and our staffing levels. So if you could, we can coordinate a meeting with the grants office and the Title I director. I think we should probably look into that a little further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, especially since it was down $500,000 for Title I, $500,000 for Title II.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an update on FY18 budget discrepancies. Mr. Frisch?
Yes, 600,000 is a number that is staying with us. That is supposed to be funny. But last year, as we just talked about, it was 600,000 for the grant fund that we lost for kindergarten grant. Here, we had proposed cuts of $800,000 for the library aides and the psychologists. The library aides we decided to maintain, and then the request was to go back to the city and to ask the city for additional funds. They committed for $250,000 of those funds. The $600,000, we thought that the Senate version was going to pass. It had the $600,000 in there. But unfortunately, when the budget was approved, the House version, which was $600,000 less, so that so now we're $600,000 short because we've allocated expenditures for $600,000 more than what we have budgeted. And when I mean budgeted, I mean entered into the system, entered into Munis system. So, and those $600,000 is a topic that we are working on to develop some reductions, and we plan on working with the assistant superintendents, deputy superintendent, and staff to come up with a plan that we can bring to the school committee on August 16th. And we intend to do that.
Ms. Doherty?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Frisch. I have to apologize if I have an attitude. I am very upset about this. First of all, I'm going to ask you, did we get the $250,000 from the city? I mean, I was there when the city manager gave us his word. Has that adjustment been made? No.
No.
No, okay. My second question, when we were involved in the budget process and we discussed what we were looking at cutting, and there was not a member of this board who wanted to make those cuts, we spoke and asked the city to come up with the funding we needed. At that time, there was a letter, I believe, from your office telling the city manager what we needed, and that amount was the $250,000, not, in fact, the $850,000. Why, or can you explain to me your thinking on basing a budget on money that we did not have from the state? The Senate had its version, the House had their version, they always get together and it changes. So, because I distinctly remember speaking with members of the council and saying, we need $850,000. I was told, no, we heard from the schools you need $250,000. So that kind of took the wind out of our sails in terms of pitching the city for the amount we needed. So I'd like an explanation of how you can build a budget on funds you don't have, what your thinking was in that letter that was sent from your office saying we needed $250,000.
Well, it was the first letter I sent was $800,000, and we met with the city manager, and in his opinion, the Senate was going to be $600,000 higher, and that he really thought, in his opinion, that we were going to get the $600,000. So in my letter, I wrote, that means then we only need $257,000 if that is coming from the Senate $600,000. So in his letter, when he wrote the letter, after the board meeting, the city council meeting, he indicated that the $611,000, if it's not approved by the state, he's not going to make up the difference. He was only going to commit to the 250 if there is free cash or some other means in his budget to do so. So we took him at his word that the Senate was likely to pass or that version was likely to pass, and that was in his opinion, and that 250,000 would be then left for him to commit. So that's how it ended up.
Ms. Martin?
So can you let me know when you received the final word from the governor's office of what our budget is?
Yeah, I can get that.
Was it last week? Was it a month ago?
Was it yet? Because my understanding is that the negotiations are still going on. There's no final budget. So it's still going on.
Still,
Yeah, so there's no final number yet.
oh, okay.
And it was
When?
in July 17th is when the DESI posted the amount from the,
Mm-hmm.
from the. I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to jump in here, but,
Your
Yes.
name, please?
Jerry Nutter, 9 Whitney Ave, Lowell, Mass. The DESI on their website posted the Chapter 70 money as of July 17th, which they said the governor had signed the budget and that Lowell would be receiving basically $600,000 less than what the Senate had originally added. But if you look on the DESI website under Finance, you'll see it's posted as of July 17th for the number for the Chapter 70 money.
And is that also true of local funds?
I'm
Sorry, I'll look at you. if
That's
you-
okay. Is that also true for what?
Local funds.
Yes.
Okay, so those were already certified?
Yes, those were already also given final numbers, yes. Yeah, the
I mean,
budget,
all the other, maybe it's just the discretionary numbers that.
yeah,
that
I
haven't
believe
been
that the final budget has
Still
been set by the governor, signed by the governor.
Okay.
Now the House is talking about overrides and
Right,
discretionary funding, yes.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Did you have any further questions on this? Okay. Yeah, it's going to be difficult to ask for additional funds when we sort of requested a lower amount, but also difficult when we were able to absorb the 600,000 this past year without any additional funds. And we're looking to absorb another 600,000 this year. But yeah, I think it's important to find out whether or not Ms. Martin's concerns are accurate, and if typically by now wouldn't you receive communication from the state? Yeah.
My sense is that it's still in play.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's through through the House trying to bring back some funding, or whether it's through some 9C cuts that are being discussed, that there's still a lot of flux on what's actually going to be the final numbers. But, if there's any additional information, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll look up on the DESI websites and then create some printouts and then have that in the board packet or school committee packet for August 16th.
Okay. And you're also going to have a plan,
A plan to close the 600,000.
Ms. Doherty?
A plan to eliminate $600,000 worth of personnel is what we're talking about, less than a month before school starts.
Right.
I just, I'm not a professional accountant. I don't do $160 million budgets for a living. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me that we built a budget on money we didn't have, on the word of the city manager, instead of just going and asking for the resources we needed. And now, at this 11th hour, I think, we're in a very tight predicament. And is that your professional opinion, the way to build a budget? We didn't even ask for what we needed. You took him on his word that, if I'm basing what you said, it was his opinion that we were going to get the funding. So we didn't ask for what we needed. We asked for less. And now we're going to be facing, I don't want to make any eliminations of any positions.
Ms. Martin?
I would say also, just in all fairness, I mean, I don't think it's no one's a mind reader, and I don't think it's fair to hold either Mr. Frisch or the manager, for that matter, accountable for what the state senate does. I mean, I think when I saw the 600,000 being added back in from the senate side, I was thrilled. I thought that solved a huge part of our problem, and I was absolutely, cautiously optimistic that that was going to happen. I mean, and I understand the frustration because every year we build our budget in a vacuum to a certain extent, because we're doing our budgeting in theory in April and May, and we'll never have the numbers from the state until after at least the very end of June. So we're always kind of in that situation where we need to craft a budget when we don't have absolutes, and it's difficult, but it's a reality of just the way we do things. So, I mean, I agree that we're going to be looking at, maybe having to make some changes, but I honestly don't feel that it's any individual's, responsibility to have told us that it was, that the environment we were functioning in, we knew that. So, I mean, I do think that the answer, as it usually is moving forward with both the school side and the city side working together to solve the problem. And I think ultimately that will be where we'll find our answers, kind of working together to figure it out. So.
Yes.
I just want to add and comment to that. I understand we do often work in the vacuum, but we had a responsive council. You were there in the spring. They were looking to work with us. And I was told, all we're told you needed is $250,000. That's where I'm really, doing some 20/20 hindsight, that if we had clearly been up front, we don't have this guaranteed money, just, a commitment that if it comes through, great. You don't have to give us $850,000. But we didn't pursue it. We pursued only the $250, and that's where my frustration is, because I'm very concerned.
And I understand the frustration,
And
and
I hear
share
what you're
the-
saying, and I don't
absolutely.
mean
And I
to
stood there with you. so I get
brutalize
it.
Mr. Frisch, but the letter came from him, and it was thrown back in my face. We were told you only needed $250, so that's what we're left with.
Yeah, that was assuming that the 600,000 was coming from the Senate. And our position was that we needed the $800,000 from the city. And if the 600,000 was coming from the Senate, there's no reason why we're requesting 800 from the city. Only the difference. And so if I wasn't clear in my letter, I'm sorry. But everybody knew when you guys were voting, when the school committee was voting, that there was uncertainty, that the Senate version was not voted on. The 250,000 was, the letter was communicated, and there was, we heard that he was going to commit to the 250,000, but we didn't have it at the time in writing. Now we got it, now we did receive it in writing. So I'm sorry if I wasn't clear, but, we're doing the best we can. And, we'll develop a plan. It'll be up to the school committee to approve the plan or to reject the plan or to modify. So we need to move forward. Okay?
Thank you. Any further discussion on this discrepancy for FY18? Okay. Next item on the agenda is an update on the transportation bid contract. Mr. Frisch.
Okay, in your packet, we sent this out at 4 o'clock today because the bid opening was at 11 o'clock today. So we were giving you the latest information. Mike Cassidy prepared a memorandum with an attachment from the city solicitor. Why don't I let Mike to take it from here.
You don't need to read the memo if,
I'm not going to read the memo. I wrote the memo,
okay, thank you.
but I will use it as crib notes. As you know, the business office began the invitation for bid for the transportation contract in January. It was ultimately bid in February with an opening in March. My recollection is that this school committee voted on the approval through permission to enter sometime in April. In the middle of July, I was contacted by the city solicitor's office and was told that the city would be rebidding the transportation contract. There was some language that was changed in the invitation to bid, that the city solicitor felt that prevented bidders from bidding on this project. So I will tell you that I did try to appeal to her. I thought it was the best interest to continue with the bid. She made a decision, and I respect that, her opinion, to move forward on a bid, and that happened about 2 weeks ago. As Mr. Frisch indicated, that we did get we had a bid opening today, and that bid is slightly higher than what was voted on by the school committee. However, there is a negotiating team that's going to meet with the vendor, as we did last March. We did reduce their price. So that price, that final contract price, will be presented to the school committee next Wednesday.
Okay. And you may not have the answers to my questions, but I'm a little confused as to why the school committee would vote on something in April and it takes until July, the end of July, to have that contract thrown out. I don't assume you have the answer, but is that when you received communication from the solicitor's office just a few weeks ago?
Yes.
And
That's when we got the message from the city solicitor's office. That contract was around
Yeah.
before it must have been during a final review. Once again, I'm not going to speak for the city solicitor.
yeah.
Probably during a final review,
Yeah.
that issue probably surfaced at some point.
So when contracts come before the school committee, they're always signed by the solicitor before we sign them, correct? That's the process. So I don't think we would have signed did we sign a
No.
contract? Was her signature on there?
No.
It was not.
Mm.
And
She held it.
we hadn't signed the
Yeah,
contract.
you had not signed it, because she didn't sign it. You're correct.
Okay, so it was held up there since April,
Right.
and there was no no, Mr.
I'll
Cassidy.
disagree with that. I thought I saw it in and around the office in June.
No, we didn't have,
No?
she mentioned she had the contract in her office and it was not signed by her.
Okay, all right.
I recall signing an NRT contract. I don't know if it was for something else or for something last year, but perhaps we can find out about that. Well, is special ed through?
That's a separate,
It's a
yes.
separate vendor, yeah. But also, if it was held up since April, wouldn't the business office sort of try to push it along and communicate with the solicitor, see what the holdup was? Did we not do that?
I sent an email out to her. I don't have the date of the email, but I said, the question was that the situation that occurred with John Dakota, the conflict of interest, and I mentioned that to the city solicitor. Is that going to, do we need the rebid or can we continue? So we got final word back just recently that they wanted us to rebid. So, in fact, we rebid. Mike Vaughn did the bidding. We did get one bidder, the same bidder. We changed the bid specs to try to attract more bidders.
Yeah. and that
But,
didn't work.
and the city solicitor was doing a lot research, and she called throughout the state, and her contacts, she learned that most of the bids that were out there, only one bidder would bid on each of the school district's contracts. So for whatever reason, there was only one bidder that was bidding. But nevertheless, and our bid was, in line with other schools that we presented back in April. And in fact, she said, though, she wanted to rebid the contract and wasn't going to sign the contract that she had before her. So I'm not sure if the contract before her had the signatures of the school committee or not.
Can you check with your
Yeah.
executive secretary? Another question I had is, I'll let you go first. Go ahead, Ms. Doherty.
I actually want to go back to the bidding process. Do we send the city solicitor and her team before we go out to bid? So did her office have an opportunity to look at it? And, I mean, we've been doing these bids for transportation a lot, right? Years and years and years. So I know we have a system in place for doing it. Does that system include getting approval from the city stakeholders? And did we do that before we even put it out to bid?
The business office met with, I'll use your term, stakeholders, so we met with the city purchasing agent, who was part of the process as well. When the bid did go out and was awarded, he shepherds that document to the law department for their review. Once again, I'm not really sure when they sit down and really go through the RFP or an invitation to bid. Some of those contracts are really, that you may sign are just to signature to form, and then there's a backup document with the invitation to bid or the RFP. And that's probably when the city solicitor reviews it, is when it gets back to her office with signatures.
So I'm sorry, so the city solicitor's office sees it when before it goes out to bid? There's a group of people, not the city solicitor,
No.
that's after it goes out to bid, is that what you said?
After it goes out to bid.
Okay, so just to go back on another point that I made, we have been doing this for years. We do these multiple contracts. What was changed? And if it was changed, was it noted so that people could see, now we're doing these things differently? Why did we make changes?
The change was is something that I was used to as formally as an assistant business manager. It's really to obtain excise taxes from the vendor. There was no intent to discourage people from bidding or to discourage people from coming to Lowell and wanting to perform the services. The city solicitor will indicate that at some point over the last couple of years, the Inspector General's office did indicate that it's advisable not to do that. It could promote or give a perception that we are discouraging bids. So there was no intent to discourage anybody here at all.
So it was because of that change that the city solicitor recommended to us to rebid the contract. So we did. The actual bid came in, I $134,000 higher. And we're going to negotiate with the bidder. You can do that if there's only one bidder, or you. And our meeting is Monday, August 14th. So that time we're going to work with the vendor and try to reduce the bid to what it was before.
Ms. Doherty?
Just one more thing I want to, just for clarification. I remember when we first talked about the fact that only one bidder came in and it was going to be $1 million more, and everybody was, obviously not happy to hear that. But then at that meeting, some information was given to us that we're actually below the rates of what people out in Worcester are paying in Springfield. So I'm just wondering, I'm not sure why they would increase the cost, $120,000 to $130,000, except maybe aggravation, that they have to do it again. But are we still under what
Yes.
generally people are paying?
Right.
Because
was-
I thought, my understanding at the time was we had a pretty good deal. It was like $350 a bus or something like that, right?
Right.
And so now they've gone back to some previous number,
Well,
but we're still,
let me explain that. They went to their original bid. Their original bid was $362
okay,
for the bus. So we're going to talk to him. We feel pretty confident, fairly confident that he will reduce his bid number back to the 350.
okay.
Ms. Martin?
Thank you. I'm assuming that we're having an open conversation about this. None of this is meant to be held confidential in terms of the conversations that happened and the changes in the actual bid documentation. So like if I say something like, we wanted to make sure that we didn't mandate that they have to park in Lowell, just say it right out loud. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one of the key changes, that we removed that stipulation.
Right.
Now, the other one that I was curious about was the age of the buses. Did that
Right.
change in the second bid?
Yes, he increased,
He?
increased,
The-
Mike Vaughn. Mike Vaughn is the city purchasing agent,
Okay.
so everything goes through the city purchasing agent.
So those were two changes that the purchasing office made, that we didn't worry about parking and that we wanted to reduce it so that everything was brand new?
No, not
Or within
brand.
3 years?
Older, more miles on the bus. Just think of your car. The more miles
Me.
you have, the less,
Yeah, okay,
Value.
that I'm familiar with. So we expanded that, so they could use an older,
Older
higher
buses.
mileage bus in
and
an effort to bring down the cost
an effort to attract more competition
at a lower cost.
at a lower cost.
Because the buses now are not going to be as new as they would have been in that original bid.
Right.
So older buses, still parked in Lowell at least, because, it's the same bidder, right? They're not going
Right.
to change where they park, so that hasn't changed.
Correct.
So we've just seen an increase, just for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think your theory may be right. So my question would be, we go through this whole process. Now, the decision to rebid, that happened as a result of the city purchasing office wanting to make these two changes, seeing that they hadn't got enough competition, so they wanted to reopen the bid?
City solicitor.
Okay, so the city solicitor said there hadn't been enough competition and went back to the purchasing office to say we needed to rebid this. Now, you had mentioned a concern you had about conflict of interest. At what point did that phone call happen? Was that before or after this was in motion?
That was before.
So it may have prompted this concern?
Well,
Or
I
was
think
it
that
held-
was, I think, a question as to, is there a conflict of interest? Do we need to rebid the contract? And then she made the ruling. It's her call. We have to abide by the city solicitor as well as the purchasing agent.
In this
In
body?
their response to
Obviously,
concern?
right, in this body.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So you're basically going to try to negotiate now with NRT to get them back down to where they were in the original proposal, Are we going to try to get back down to the original age of the buses, or are we just going to?
I think we're going to try to lower the costs even more because of the age of the vehicles. So our plans are to,
Seems fair.
at a minimum, get back to where we were,
Right.
and then try to, on the year 2 and year 3, because there's a big jump from, we lowered the price in the first year from 362 to 350. So then we want to carry that lower price and not have a big jump from year 1 to year 2.
Right.
So our goal is on year 2 and year 3, try to bring those prices down.
And we still have the flexibility within this new contract that if we were to eliminate some busing, we'd be able to do that without any
Right.
penalty? Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to just point out that our ability to negotiate is severely diminished because school starts in 3 weeks, and it's not like we have other options out there.
Yeah.
We are in a really tight spot with this.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to understand what initiated the review. It was a question from your office to the city solicitor about conflict of interest?
And I heard that they were concerned about that as well, so I wanted to
We
email
had,
them.
we had a contract that was less than what other cities were paying with a bus service that we've had multiple contracts with and been, I believe, somewhat satisfied with their service. To get newer buses, I mean, we've actually, not only are we paying more today, we don't have as good a contract. We're going to have older buses that are more likely to break down and things like that. And we're weeks away from school starting, which brings me to, what's the plan to get those routes in place? Have we got somebody in place for transportation to get us through the next few weeks into the start of school?
Let me address your first point. We don't have a lot of leverage. They don't have a lot of leverage. They're counting on our business. So we're both equally. So I do think there is leverage. Yeah.
That's encouraging. I would love you to be able to get a bit better deal, Mr. Frisch, believe me, I do.
Well, we're working on it. And in terms of the plan, we're working with the Family Resource Center office, and we're working with the clerical union to develop a plan to get the bus passes out, to get the routes completed on time. So that's in process. That's happening.
So we don't have a transportation manager?
We don't have a transportation manager. I've asked Mike to oversee that in the interim. This is obviously...
Have you agreed to that, Mr. Cassidy?
He's purposely keeping a blank face.
Yeah. Sure.
If I might also offer some suggestions, I'm not sure when is our former transportation director's last day with the district,
Right.
but if we could
We're also working with...
work with him
Yes.
to get him to help us either by training Mr. Cassidy, or we need help. We cannot start the school year, and I think it's an awful lot to put on Mr. Cassidy, and despite, it's not anything personal,
Yeah.
but, I've been in this district a long time, saw my kids go through the school system, and I think that we had some good work out of our former transportation director, and if he'd be willing to help us out, I think
And-
I
yeah.
would not be
Yeah.
against asking very nicely for that.
Yeah, and I have reached out to him, and he has agreed to help us out. So that is part of the plan. With his expertise, his training, along with Mike and along with the staff we have down there, that is our plan to, make sure that on day one, everything is set.
And I think we need to make sure that the clerical staff have the support they need to to do the job, because not only are they having increased duties regarding transportation, but we're also without a family resource center coordinator
Right,
presently. So they're
Right.
taking on additional duties in that aspect as well, right?
right.
Okay. Ms. Martin?
Have we set any target dates for completion? Routes will be completed as of this date, bus passes will go out.
18th is our date.
For which?
August 18th, to get those bus passes out. That is not this
So that's-
Friday,
Okay,
the
10
next
days?
Friday.
Okay.
Yes.
Another concern I had regarding this entire process is that, we had, I don't know about the rest of my colleagues, but I had found out about this in the newspaper rather than a formal communication from the superintendent. And I think that's an issue. That's an issue. I think, this body met regarding the transportation contract, as Mr. Cassidy said, in April, and we had a full discussion on whether or not we should have gone out to bid, and everybody agreed we need to remain with this vendor. And then we took a vote as a full body to endorse this contract as presented. So as far as we all knew, that contract was in place. My next question for you is, obviously we have summer school going on, or had. How are we paying those bills without a contract in place?
Yeah, we're going to invoice, or they're going to invoice us separately, and we'll pay those invoices, obviously. And, obviously, the summer school is, finished. The transportation was completed, so we're obligated to, pay for that. And we made that statement to the bus company that we're going to honor that, obviously, the invoices. It's, we need, obviously, we work well together. We have a good relationship from umpteen years that we've been with this company, and so we're going to continue that.
So we haven't paid any invoices yet?
Not yet. That's
Okay.
my knowledge.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Doherty?
If I could just ask regarding the communication, I think going forward, we really need to be included in this stuff, even if it's just an email from the superintendent's office. It doesn't have to be in a packet
Okay.
necessarily, but even the knowledge about the cut, not getting the 600,000 from from the Senate that we had counted on our budget. If we could have talked about this weeks ago, it wouldn't feel so dire as just, a couple of weeks before school started. So I really would like to emphasize again, to please get the reports we have. I realize today you're waiting for the bid time to close, but to get the reports so that we have a chance to look at them before we
Right.
actually meet. And I know that, so I mean,
Yeah.
you did send the budget, the year-end stuff on
Right.
Friday, and that was great. But I think going forward, that would be something we really need to focus on doing a better job of. And then with what we've discussed tonight about the plan for getting our buses ready to go, and I'd like to have something in our packet for the August 16th meeting on that Friday, just an update. This is how we're working around not having a transportation director to start our school year. Just, kind of just the formal plan that you alluded to tonight about how we're going to get through the start of school and, what additional duties are being covered where. And that would be good to, have something in writing so we know you guys are on top of this and doing the best you can. Because obviously, we want to get a good transportation director in
Right.
place and a good family planning person, or family resource person. So, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept the reports as reports of progress. Motion by Ms. Doherty, seconded by myself. All those in favor, aye. Motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
seconded. Thank you very much.
Thank you.